Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game that was played yesterday on day one of the Freestyle Chess Grand Slam tournament in Las Vegas. We're going to show a very nice game between Arjun Ergasi and Hikaru Nakamura. Hikaru had a brilliant day one. He literally obliterated everyone. And for those of you who may not know this, Levon Aronian, even though I've shown that game where Magnus won against him, he had the same amount of points as Magnus at the end of day one, and they went into playoffs where Levon won two games against Magnus. Now, I'm not going to be showing those as I really think it's better if you check out the live footage. Most of the moves in those games were played with seconds on the clock, and it's simply impossible to properly illustrate, the how intense it was by just showing you the moves, and that's why I opted for this one. And also, as Hikaru is the one with the most points from both groups after the first day, so do check it out. Really a nice playoff between Levon and Magnus. But yeah, I do recommend the live footage. So here, Arjun with white opens with pawn to f4. It's a pretty standard setup. I mean, nothing too out of the ordinary. Rook where it belongs. Knight and bishop switched places. The queen on e1. Okay, is a little bit weird, but yeah, nothing too out of place. If you want a castle queenside, you will have to get rid of the bishop and queen, and if you want a castle kingside, you will have to get rid of most of the pieces on the king side. So let's see what happens. Pawn to f4. We have knight to b6 by Hikaru, b3 and pawn to f6, preparing to strike with pawn to e5. Pawn to c4 and now pawn to e5. It looks like you're preparing to fianchetto the bishop, even though there's no bishop there. But Arjun will actually fianchetto the king in this game. And here you could capture. It's definitely a nice move, but Arjun goes pawn to f5, aimed at controlling the knight on f6, so the knight on f8, so the knight can't really move. We have pawn to g6 and knight to e3. We have bishop to e7 by Hikaru and knight a to c2, followed by pawn to d5. Hikaru goes for a central breakthrough. We have captures, knight captures and knight captures on d5, and it seems like you could capture that pawn on a7, but then rook comes to a8, attacks the bishop. You will lose the a2 pawn, and that isn't really all that impressive. So here, after knight captures on d5, we have queen to f1, and now castles queenside. Okay, very nicely done. We have king to b2. Arjun fianchettos the king, and king to b8. We have pawn to e4, challenging the knight, and knight to b4. And here we have bishop to e3. Now, it's really mandatory to capture the knight on b4. Otherwise, you will have a very, very difficult game. Unfortunately for Arjun, he did not capture it. But with a little time on the clock, he's already down to 2 minutes. I will show you what you would have to play here. It looks very odd because the d2 pawn is hanging. And if you play pawn to d3, then queen to c6, and you can resign. There's just not much you can do here. And if rook to c1 to stop queen c3, well, there's just bishop to a3 check, and that's it. King captures on a3, or you don't capture, it doesn't really matter. Queen captures on c1 with check, then the king comes to a4, and then rook d6, and slowly but surely that white king is getting checkmated. So what you would have to do is go bishop to c2, give up the d2 pawn, and black really shouldn't even capture that pawn. If black captures that pawn, it looks like white's in trouble, but you're going to start developing. Bishop e3, you attack the rook, and after, let's say, bishop to a3 check, you don't mind. King captures, rook captures, and the problem is now after queen d3, you don't, yes, black is controlling a lot of nice squares here, and if you could get somehow, your queen into the attack, let's say if you could get your queen to a5, it would be even checkmate, but the black queen cannot move, otherwise the black king gets checkmated. And, okay, the rook is hanging, you would have to move the rook, then the rook comes into the game again, you're threatening checkmate. So this is how white defends, and then you bring the king right back. So it involves giving up that pawn. But Arjun played bishop to e3, and now his position will be very, very difficult to defend. Knight to d3 check. Okay, king to a1, no problem. Queen to c6. Okay, we have knight to e1, offering a trade of knights. Knight captures and queen captures. And here, bishop to c5. Queen captures on e4. I hope none of you are looking at that, as bishop captures an a7 check will cost you one queen. So bishop to c5, and here we have bishop to f3. Just continuing development, and Hikaru drops a bishop d4 check. So okay, you have to capture, bishop captures, rook captures on d4, and now rook to c1, attacking Hikaru's queen, queen back to d7, still putting pressure on that d2 pawn, and f captures on g6. And it looks like you can capture, and just threaten something like queen to d4 and completely disregard this capture on g6. But if you did that, then white has a very unpleasant surprise. Queen captures on d2, and then after queen captures, you just bring the rook into the game, and if the queen moves, it's checkmate, so you're going to have to capture the rook with check, and after captures, now you recapture, and okay, black is somewhat better here. So that's why h captures on g6, and now black is much better opposed to being somewhat better. We have rook to c2, adding a defender to the d2 pawn, and queen d6. Okay, we have queen to f2, knight to e6. Now the knight is coming to f4. You can play pawn to g3, but Arjun decides against it. He goes pawn to h4. He wants to go g4 and h5, and then h6, h7, and create a pass pawn on the king side. Rook to d8, and now rook h to c1, doubling up on the c file. But Hikaru just says pawn to c6. Those rooks are not doing any good work on that c file. Pawn to g4. Arjun prepares to create a pass pawn. Knight to f4. We have rook to d1 and pawn to a5. We have pawn to h5, pawn to g5, and queen to f1. Followed by pawn to c5. Here, Hikaru should throw in a knight d3, simply limit the mobility of the white queen. But okay, he's also playing against Gukesh's clock. He's down to 19. Sorry, not Gukesh. Arjun's clock. He's down to 19 seconds. Yeah, pawn to c5 does allow his queen to b5. But that's also one of the things that makes this game really interesting. We have queen to b5, pawn to b6, and now king b1. We have rook to b4, attacking the queen, and queen on a6 is usually something that you really want to have, especially if your opponent has castle queenside. There's just not all that much that white queen can do there. We have knight to e6, and here Hikaru is preparing, again, the nastiest of surprises. And there's really no good move you can play here. Pawn to d4 with maybe, a miracle, for you to hold, but rook to c3 was played, and now Hikaru is completely winning, but only if you find the next move. So have at it, while I give you a couple of seconds. The move is pawn to c4. It's usually pawn to b4 on this channel, I know, but now it's pawn to c4. And the point is you're breaking through here on the queen side, but even more importantly, you've cleared the c5 square for the knight. Once that knight lands on c5, the white queen is trapped. So, like I said, a great square for the queen most of the time, but just not this time. And you could, well, there's not much you could do. Knight c5 is coming, whatever you play. And here, rook captures on c4 was played. Just hoping for knight to c5 so you can capture on c5, and that would actually work out if you played it right away. Rook captures on c5 would be very nice. If b captures, you happily trade queens, and yes, you are worse, but maybe you can survive. So after rook captures on c4, of course, Hikaru goes for the absolute best. Queen to d3 check, and now you cannot even bring the rook back, as the queen would capture the queen. So king a1, and now finally knight to c5. You could also capture the bishop on f3, but knight c5 is just much more pleasant. The queen will fall now. Also, again, knight captures is impossible. Then queen captures queen. So rook captures on b4. Arjun tries to grab at least a little bit of something for that queen. Knight captures on a6, and the rook captures on b6 with check. We have king a7, and the rook captures on f6. And here, Hikaru finished in great style. He played queen to c2, and he was in this position on move 36 that Arjun Ergesi resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Even if something like bishop to e2 to put pressure on the knight, you just don't care. You still just capture on d2, and you checkmate the white king. If rook captures on a6, you again don't care. You just move the king, and that's it. Rook captures on d2. This is checkmate. This is checkmate. If rook captures, then this is checkmate. So everything is checkmate here, and of course that's why Arjun resigned the game. So yeah, brilliant stuff by Hikaru. These are the final standings after, sorry about that, after day one finished. A little bit blurry, not sure why. But okay, from Group White, you have the top four: Pragnananda, Abdusattorov, Sindarov, and Aronyan. And Aronyan played tiebreaks versus Magnus Carlsen. He defeated Magnus Carlsen in both games and thus eliminated Magnus, not from the tournament, but from the possibility of actually winning the event. He can still get third place, but he cannot be first or second, as that also applies to Wesley, to Vincent Keimer, and to Bivisara Salbayeva. And from Group Black, as you can see, Hikaru obliterated everyone, 6 points without losing a single game. Hans Niemann, second with 4.5 points, also had a very, very nice event. Lost the direct encounter to Hikaru, and Hikaru really, did a number on Hans in that game. It was also very nice. Fabiano and Arjun Ergesi, those are the top four that can still win the event. And then Lanier, Dominguez Perez, Samuel Sevian, Ray Robson, and Vidit Gujarati. Very interesting event. These are Hikaru's opponents, as you can see. Not a single loss, only two players that got a draw, Lanier and Fabi. Sevian, Arjun, Ray Robson, Hans Niemann, and Vidit all lost to Hikaru. Brilliantly played. We'll see if Hikaru can manage also such powerful energy on day two, or will someone else have to say anything about that? Hope you enjoyed it. Sorry for those of you who started watching this video in my previous version. That was a mistake on my part. I completely mixed what is actually real and what is not. I would like to thank Seshadri Subramanian, Nick Lynn, Paul Hinamun, Ricardo Cordona Lopez, and James White for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.